You just want to be right in the middle of the video. All right, you can come sit over here. It's all good.
She's in the video too.
Okay,
Are
ready?
we live with this thing?
Yeah.
All right.
Here we go.
Here we are.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hey guys, it's Kristen and
Zack. I'm here.
And if you don't know the news yet, well, you do by the title of this video, but we are pregnant. And this is
crazy,
shocking, and so exciting. And yeah, we're just excited to get to share the story with you guys of how the pregnancy's been going. As of right now, we are just coming up to 37 weeks. So I've been pregnant for a while.
Close.
Actually.
Like we're getting here.
I know. And yeah, it's just wild because so many of you have been praying for us for so long.
Thank you. Thank you for praying.
Like ever since we have been sharing our journey of infertility and miscarriage, and then a lot of you followed us through the whole adoption journey. So many of you just continued to pray for us and pray for God's provision for a baby. And like I have received, I don't even know how many, like hundreds and hundreds of DMs from a lot of you when we announced the pregnancy on Instagram, just saying that you've been praying for us and praying for this miracle and that God would answer this prayer. And so thank you so much, because I feel like this answer to prayer isn't just like our prayers or even our parents and like our families, but like thousands of people.
So cool.
Christians around the world who've been praying for us. So thank you. We cannot believe we're here at this
moment.
Praise
the Lord.
Yes. Praise God.
Lord.
How do you feel about being at this place?
Well, I feel excited and terrified all at the same time because I've never done this before. So it's one of those things where, of course, there's like all the excitement and joy and happiness and just gratitude of being pregnant, being so close.
Yeah.
You've never been here before. And then also the like, oh, it's here. Oh, I don't know how to do this. Here we go. I got to figure this out.
We don't know what we're doing.
So a little terrified.
And you were telling me you feel like your people group you're more natural with like kids once they can like walk and talk and like maybe go hunting with you.
Yeah. If they can walk to the truck and get in the truck with me, I'm like, that's my kind of kid. The baby thing, it just makes me nervous. I don't really know what I'm doing. That's going to be her.
Alone in that.
It's going to be her season.
I think a lot of guys feel that way. Yeah. But you did install the car seat and you have been crushing. You set up the crib, like you've been crushing stuff.
Oh, I can do that.
You can do all the projects.
You just hold the baby. I'll fix things in the house.
You're going to do awesome. So, okay. We just want to give like a quick recap on the journey.
How do you feel?
Oh, I mean, I just feel more and more and more excited. Part of what I want to share in this video a little bit later is just the pregnancy process of like just all of the emotions and like every week and the ups and downs of like, is this going to work? Is it going to last? Just with our history of miscarriage, it's been a long journey and the pregnancy has felt very long, but then at the same time, like snap, here we are so close to the end.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you don't know what we're having, we did announce it on Instagram. So we're having a
girl.
It's a little girl.
It's a girl.
So just knowing like she is like, this is God's plan. Like she's meant to be in our family. Like obviously there's so many things we don't know about why God does what he does, but this is what's happening right now. And it's like the most exciting. And I just feel excited now. Whereas early on in the pregnancy, I think I felt a lot of just fear over even getting to this place. So I just feel so excited, so grateful. It's like, it's hard to imagine it though.
I can't wait to see you be a baby mom. It's going to be so fun. You're a great boy mom right now, but the baby mom is going to be a new thing. And I'm looking forward to that.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So rewind back in time. We got married in
Starting over? Like what are we doing?
Like very beginning. We got married in 2011. And I think we both thought, oh, we'll just probably have kids pretty fast. We weren't really doing anything to prevent.
Works, right? It just kind of happens.
If you don't prevent, you get pregnant. Like that was the assumption. And for many people, that's what happens. But for us, not the case. So we were married in 2011. And then, you know, the whole first year, second year, we weren't doing anything to prevent. And we were just like, oh, I guess this is God's timing. You know, he is giving us some time to like get our marriage like really strong before we have kids. I don't know. But then at year 2, we got pregnant and we were so excited and just like, this is perfect, like the perfect amount of time before kids. And now God's giving us kids and it's always been in his control. So we were thrilled. And then as many of you know, 6 weeks later, miscarried. And it totally shocked us because it just, I don't know, it wasn't even on our radar for some reason. So many people miscarry, and especially on their first one. But for us, I don't know, I just felt like, oh, this pregnancy is 100% going to happen. And like,
I think that's normal.
I guess.
If you don't have any other
you don't have any history
context
yet
or whatever, like, yeah, I think it made sense to us that, oh, you're pregnant. And then, okay, 9 months later, you have a baby.
I mean, I remember.
Didn't even think about it.
Yeah, like immediately making the Pinterest board for like the baby, like the nursery.
Did you really?
Yes.
I don't even remember that.
It was like right after, like, oh, like I was 100% in. Like I was already living at the place that the baby was here. And then obviously we miscarried. And so it was so shocking, even more so because I don't think I had any room in my heart, any posture of surrender, of like trusting the Lord with the outcome. It was more like, God gave us this baby and it's going to happen. And this is amazing. Let's start planning kind of thing. And that's not what happened. And it was really hard. And then we were
so
like,
that was
okay.
year 2?
That was year 2 of marriage.
Okay.
And in year 2 as well, 6 months later, we, were grieving the miscarriage, learning just even in our own marriage, like processing grief like that. We had never walked through anything together like that. So
I didn't do a great job with that, by the way. We learned a lot.
Hard.
We learned a lot through that. Yeah.
It's hard to navigate.
Just going through suffering together and how
like as men and women,
yeah.
like we're so different.
That was good for us. We wouldn't choose it, but that was good for us.
Right. Lord willing, we grew a lot. And then 6 months later, I got pregnant again. And it was just like, okay, this is going to happen. Back-to-back miscarriages are so rare. Like the percentage drops really, goes down a lot to have a back-to-back miscarriage. So again, I think my heart just grabbed onto it like it was going to happen. But I will say there was definitely a little more of like, okay, but it might not. And so, Lord, help us to trust you, but we're pretty sure this is going to work out. But it might not, it was like a little bit of like
more
still
open-handed,
but I still assumed that it was going to work out. And I mean, I guess it's better to live not in fear. I don't know. But that one, the second miscarriage, same exact story. It was so weird. It was like exactly 6 weeks, couple days, almost identical to the first situation. We miscarried again, just like really fast all at once. And it was, I don't know. I feel like even more shocking than the first one because I'm thinking statistically, this is pretty like a small chance that this would happen. And then it happened. And it was just, I don't know.
That was our story. We were the small statistic.
Yeah, like the couple percent or whatever. And so we had another chance. I will say the second time we worked through it better as a couple, don't you think?
Yeah. And I mean, it was so soon after the first one.
I know.
So we had practice and then we got to implement what we learned from the previous time. So, I mean, by no means were we perfect, but we actually had something to go off of. I mean, was the first one harder for you or easier? I mean, they're both
probably
difficult.
I don't know. The second one I think was harder because it was like, wow, again?
Right.
Just like this.
It was almost a more sure thing. Like, oh, of course.
It was just, I don't know. Even less expected. I don't know. They were both super, super hard. So here we are. We're a couple years married and we are now have 2 miscarriages under our belts. We hadn't pursued any sort of testing or anything, fertility testing, hadn't really seen doctors yet. We did with the second miscarriage, but they were like, it happens. It's just part of life. We're really sorry. So at that point though, we were like, let's just get some testing to try to see if there's a problem.
Were the doctors concerned at all? I don't think they were.
They weren't super concerned. They were like, 3 miscarriages is kind of, when we get more concerned, we're like, well, we have had 2 and we are concerned. So we did pursue some testing. I remember just like very basic, like some foundational kind of like infertility testing. And that didn't really give us any answers.
Everything's good. Based on the test, right?
Yeah. Like you're young, you're healthy. The numbers aren't showing any problematic signs. Like
tubes are working.
Yeah, just keep
numbers
trying.
Numbers are good. Yeah.
And we're like, okay, that's great news, but like you kind of want there to be something you can pinpoint so that you can go after it and like fix whatever the problem is. But in all of that, I would say, okay, well, before I get to that, we decided, okay, we're like, let's just keep going. Like, we'll just live life.
Keep trying.
And hope, hope and pray for the best. So we did. And little did we know that year 2 would turn into year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6.
Of nothing.
Yeah. Then what I got diagnosed with was unexplained infertility because now.
Very helpful.
You've got 2 miscarriages. Yeah. And now you have infertility, but there's nothing that we can find on any test to explain why you aren't getting pregnant now and why you can't keep a pregnancy, like we had the miscarriages. So for us, that felt like, I don't know, for me, it felt like an extremely, just like even the word infertility, like very almost spiritually, like fruitless and like dry, like a dry season of like longing for something so bad and God not giving it to you. It just was a lot of time without a lot of answers. I don't know. How were you doing there during that time?
Yeah. I mean, obviously we process it very differently. Obviously it was a long time. I was more of the, I was living life, working, doing the things that I needed to do. I'm not living with it every day like you are.
Yeah. In the same way.
So I'd say I was more content in the season. But after, year 6 and 7, it was kind of like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember during that time, and I've shared this before, but someone asked me the question, it was the sister, I won't mention who, but in a loving way, she just said, like how you doing? And we were just talking about the infertility and like the longings of my heart and prayers. And she'd been praying for me and, throughout this whole process. But she just asked me really gently, like, so do you think if God never gave you a baby, would he still be enough? And of course, my instant Christian answer was, of course, like, absolutely. The Lord is enough. We sing about it at church every Sunday. Like, it's, yes, 100%. But it really got me thinking when I actually took that question to heart, like, if God never gives me a baby, is he enough? Like in the sense that he's enough to satisfy me. He's enough to fulfill me. I don't have to have a baby to be content, to be happy, to have a thriving life. Like, is God actually enough? My relationship with him and trusting him and him being my all in all. Like, is that actually a reality for me? Or in the depths of my heart, do I feel like, yeah, like I love God and he is enough, in addition to having a baby and getting pregnant, then my life will be complete. God plus this thing. And I just remember there's some verses in Lamentations that I want to read because they were really a big turning point in my heart, I think, during this season that just felt like such a drought, like such a dry season of the Lord just helping me see that I wasn't pursuing him to be enough, that I really was like God plus having a baby is what's going to make me complete. So Lamentations 3, the whole chapter is awesome, but 22 through 24 says, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. And that last part is the part that really stuck out to me because it's talking about the Lord being our portion and our soul acknowledging that he is our portion. And because he's our portion, we'll hope in him. That's where our hope is. And for me, I was looking, as I got honest with myself, I realized that having a baby was and had become an idol in my heart and something that I viewed as being my ultimate portion. Like once I can get that baby, then my soul will be satisfied. Then I'll have that portion. And that's where my hope is. So if the baby's my portion, my hope is in having the baby and not ultimately in God, which it's impossible to be fully satisfied with God if you're hoping in something other than him ultimately. And so Lamentations just really convicted my heart and helped me to see that the Lord wasn't my portion like I thought he was, and my hope wasn't ultimately in him. And that was a point of huge like spiritual growth and just a realization for me of my heart is not in the right place. It's not seeking the Lord like it should. And that's why, not that we don't still wrestle with the unfulfilled longing, like there's a balance of like longing for something and trusting the Lord at the same time. But when our hope is completely in that thing and not ultimately in the Lord, then that's when things are backwards. And so for me, I realized that. And that was, I don't know, for me, a turning point of like, wow, God may never give us children. Like that's a reality I have to face. And now what? Like, how am I going to turn to him and pursue him and be satisfied in him in like a genuine way where he is my hope, he is my portion, and I can live a life that's fruitful for his glory. So for me, it was really what felt like a dry season. I guess all that to say, like, I feel like God looking back kind of redeemed it and it became a really spiritually fruitful season, even though we weren't able to bear.
Isn't that what God normally does?
I know.
Like
That's how he likes
the
to
hard
work.
times are where we draw closer to him. We start to recognize our own inadequacies and our need for him. And that's when we have the spiritual growth.
Yeah.
I saw that in you. I think we just process it very differently.
Yeah.
It's much more about the day to day and doing things, and not as concerned about what's happening. Of course, it's on my mind, and we were having conversations about it, but it definitely wasn't as hard a season for me as it was for you. So
yeah, for sure. So then our marriage, like what? It's like year 7, year 6, year
You're
7.
Gonna have to remind
I don't
me.
know. It's like hard to
remember.
keep track of all the timing, but I mean, here we are now married for 7+ years, and we are still praying. And my joke was,
and you're still praying,
and many of you are still praying. My joke was like, you know what? I don't know if God's ever going to give us a child. He's enough if not. However, I'm not going to give up on these prayers until I literally hit menopause, because until the door is like slammed shut, I'm going to keep praying for this.
And I think I was more like, I think it's closed. I'm good. I think
you were just like surrendered. Like,
I'm like, okay,
it's God's.
If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, no big deal.
Oh, no big deal.
I mean, I guess not no big deal, but like I'm content with that.
Yeah,
it probably wasn't that spiritual. It was probably just more like just frustration.
The journey was so hard that it almost felt like, can we just be done with this?
Yeah, that was probably more. I'm like, I'm just tired.
Just like accept our fate and like move on almost. Yeah. I wasn't giving up.
So what was the year?
So then I don't know, around year 9, out of the blue, totally shocking, we get pregnant after all these years. And it was just like, what? Like, so.
Yeah, we were like mind blown.
Yeah.
Like, wait, huh?
It was just like so unexpected.
We had multiple confirmations. We had to really make sure that was
all the tests.
Legit. Yeah. How many tests? Like,
probably many.
5,
probably like every brand in the store and every test that I could get a hold of. So we find out we're pregnant and we're like, whoa. And this pregnancy just, I don't know, it felt different from the beginning. And we made it past the six week mark, which was like the time for us where things always ended. So that was humongous. And then we made it, we're like, wow, we haven't miscarried. And it's 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, 11 weeks, and we still haven't miscarried. We're almost out of the first trimester. And so you can imagine, of course, we were like so excited, but also very much holding this one with an open hand, I think in a more genuine way than I think we ever had before. But at the same time, it was so positive that we just assumed like, wow, like this is a massive answer to prayer. Like the Lord has given us this answer of all these years. And here we go. We're about to have this baby. We're almost out of the first trimester. Like that's unheard of for us. And then, as many of y'all know, we've shared this story before. We go to the doctor around 11 weeks because I was started to have some like random spotting. I was like, okay, that's probably not good. And then she confirmed that there wasn't a heartbeat anymore and that the heartbeat had actually, based on the baby's development, had stopped around 8 weeks. But we just didn't know because I had no signs of miscarriage. And so that moment, I will never forget, just being in the doctor's office and her telling us that, looking at the ultrasound and getting really quiet and just telling us that there wasn't a heartbeat. It was almost like words that she was saying, but I couldn't even fully process. Like you must be wrong. Like there's something wrong with your screen because this cannot be, like you can't be telling us that right now. And it was awful. Like it just felt like someone was like stabbing my heart. I know. And thankfully we were together. Like for that appointment, like I can't imagine if I had just been by myself, but we both just started crying and like completely just like breaking down. And she left and gave us like a little bit of time. And that was just the beginning of processing that miscarriage, which was, in my opinion, like the hardest by far, just because of how far along we were. I don't know. Do you feel like it was?
100%. Yeah. Cause that was more like far enough along where you'd already become kind of attached.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was like,
our hope, our hope was getting built up.
Like, okay, this is it. This is the one. And God had different plans.
Yeah. So that was so devastating. And the grief that we walked through was, for me personally, up to that point in life, even more so than the first two, even other hard things we'd gone through with other grandparents and things dying. It was just like so personal and so just unexpected with how far along we were that one took me a lot longer to just grieve and process. And my heart really struggled to view God as being good, as being trustworthy. I really struggled with feeling like God cared about us, me, this baby. It felt almost like a cruel joke. Like, why would you even give us this pregnancy to just take it away? Like, why? Like, it would be better to just not give it to us at all, is how my heart was feeling in those moments. And
I was struggling with some anger, to be honest, like toward God, just like, what are you, like, would you do this to us?
Yeah, it just felt like so, we couldn't really, we wanted answers and there were no answers, right? And that's so often how life works. And so just getting back to a place of like remembering God's character, and that was what did it for me as I started doing a study. And I've shared this through the names and attributes of God. In fact, we have a free resource we created because of that at Girldefined. If you just go to girldefined.com/God, you can download a free, just 1-page PDF that has 30 days of praying through the names and attributes of God. And I worked through something similar at this season in my life where every day I would just take one name or attribute. I would look up the scripture that went with that, and I would just ask God to help me believe that that was true about him. Like, your word is telling me that you are my stronghold. I don't feel that right now. I don't feel at all like you're my stronghold. And I would read the verses and I would meditate and just say, but Lord, this is who you say you were. I believe your word is true. Help me in my unbelief, basically. Help me to believe this about you. And I would every day just take that next name, that next attribute. And it was huge. It was like over that 30-day period, it felt like my heart just went on a personal retreat with the Lord of like going from feeling angry and betrayed almost, just all these emotions in the grief to actually looking at God and seeing him for who he says he is, not who I feel he is, but who he actually says he is. And then slowly God softening my heart to believe that those things are true about him. And when you're faced with like 30 different names and attributes of God, it's hard, and you're believing them. It's hard to stay angry at a God when you see his character so clearly and you see his attributes so clearly, and you start to believe them. So that's what
was the book we read too? We read
yes. Therefore I have hope.
Therefore I have hope. That was one of the things we read together.
Yeah.
It's written by a guy who actually lost a son, and an older son, like
couple years,
3 years old maybe, and just him walking you through the process of grieving and how to grieve in a godly way, and trust the Lord through the pain and the hurt. Big deal for us to do that together. That was super helpful.
Oh yeah, I'm thankful for your leadership during that time, because you were definitely, you were grieving, obviously, and it was super hard for you too, but you were really a strong anchor for me.
I feel like 3 days, I'm like, okay, you got to get going on the other side, and that's just not how it works.
No, it's a process. But you were really good about just like, okay, we would read the book together, and I would just be like crying so much, and you would just gently like lead us into the next chapter or just like pray. That was rough. That was really hard. So that happened. And now here we are, 7-8 years of marriage. And by the way, throughout our whole marriage, people had constantly brought up the question of adoption to us. Just a side note, because when you're struggling with infertility, recurrent miscarriage, unexplained everything. And of course, people well-meaning are like, well, have you considered adoption? Like, it would be a great option. And it was something that we had been brought up to us many times over the years, but neither of us just were in a place where we felt like, yes, this is God's plan for us. Let's move forward with this. It wasn't, and there are some other factors, I think, underneath the surface for why we were hesitant to even want to consider it. But all of that changed around, I don't know, year 9 of marriage, year 10.
2020.
Okay, so year 9. The conversation of adoption got brought up. I was with some friends, some sisters, and someone asked the question like, hey, have y'all, do you think you would ever seriously consider adoption? It was something like that. And I was just like, well, not at this point. It's not really on our radar. It's definitely something that we've prayed about, but it's not really something we're pursuing right now or thinking about pursuing in the future. And then this person said, well, why not? And I was like, Well, because I think it's, I'm like trying to come up with like a spiritual answer.
You ask hard questions.
It's just what we're not pursuing it. Like we don't really have a peace about it. It feels like it's a very specific ministry or calling that God would lead you into. And we just don't feel that. And as I'm talking, I'm realizing like there's a deeper reason here. It's not just because we don't feel like we're being called to this. And this person point blank asked me, do you think it's fear holding you back from wanting to pursue or even consider adoption? And of course, again, the Christian answer, like, no, absolutely not. We're totally trusting God. We're prayerful about this. Like, no way. And then, of course, as I like think about it more, I'm like, oh my goodness, my heart is so fearful of this. It's something I'm fearful to even think about because, like, for many reasons. One being, it just kind of feels like, oh, we're giving up on ever having a baby. So almost like this other option we're going to pursue, which is fear-based, not trusting the Lord. Mm-hmm. Another thing I was wrestling with was all of the unknowns in adoption of like, there's so many upsets and things that can go wrong and so many unknowns. And I've just, with all the miscarriages, I don't know if I can handle any more upsets and unknowns and things falling through and getting attached and then it not working out and like, oh, like just so many fears. And I realized all of the true reasons why, at least in my heart, I'm not really even thinking about this seriously is because I'm afraid. I'm scared. And I think I came home and I was like, I just kind of brought up the question to you maybe. I can't really remember how long.
You for sure brought it up to me. I'm not bringing that up. Yeah.
You weren't thinking about it, but like you were, I don't think you had the same fear maybe that I did. Or what?
I think it was just not an option for me.
In your brain, it was just like, that's not really like
that's not for us.
Yeah. So I just said, what do you think about this to Zach? I'm like, what if we just take some time to genuinely pray and get educated on adoption and try to understand this from a biblical perspective. We've been operating from just our own brains and not from an informed biblical perspective on adoption. And so, yeah, of course we're scared. Of course we're just like, we don't know. But what if we actually like get informed and get educated and get genuinely prayerful and then have another conversation? And you were like, okay, let's do that. Right?
I'm not sure I was as on board with it.
Not at first.
I was like, I guess.
Yeah.
Probably something along that. Like hesitantly agreed to the process.
So I found this book by Russell Moore called Adopted for Life. I got the audiobook and I just started listening to it and it blew my socks off.
How fast did you listen to that?
It was like one day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was like doing yard work and stuff and I'm like, I was just crying, like doing yard work because the book was
it's 2020. Remember, we're all at home.
We're all at home.
Down. We got time on our hands.
So I'm outside. I think I was power watching the back patio. I'm just like devouring this book because everything he shared, it was like light bulbs going off of like these gospel pictures of adoption and the gospel of all of these compelling reasons why as Christians we should consider it. Just like the need. He talked about so many of the practical aspects that people face, from the finances to logistics to just like making it happen, domestic, international, like all the things. I was just learning so much and like it was like light bulbs were going off. My eyes were being opened. I was being so it was just compelling, like is the word that comes to mind. And I was on fire. I
think I left her that morning. She's like, I'm going to read this book. And I got home that night and it was like a switch. And she's like, you have to read this book.
You have to read this book tonight.
And she's like, I was like, okay, I'll start on it. I'll start on it. I'm like, oh, wow, she's kind of really into this.
And you started it.
Kind of calmed down, and I started it. And about 4 hours later, she's like, "How far have you gotten?" or whatever. Like that day, that night, I'm like, okay, what? Where are you? I'm like a chapter in. She's like, it's got to go faster.
Like chapter in,
more fast. Like, okay. So I think I did it in like maybe a week or two, and that was long.
I kept asking you like,
that was
have you finished it? Yes, but you got it
now,
in.
I will say. That was the turning point of my positive view on adoption. Not that I had a negative view, but just not for us. Right?
Yeah, so it was maybe a neutral view.
Yeah, that was the turning point. That book walked, as Kristen said, us through the process of what adoption is, why it's good, why it might be for you, and then at the end, the last chapter, I'm on a run, and I'm tearing up, crying. He's talking about his adopted boys, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was just amazing.
Yeah.
It was an amazing story. And I had to admit to Kristen that I cried during the book.
You're making me cry right now. Because I'm thinking of our boys.
That's hard to, it was hard for me to admit to Kristen that it was that impactful, because that means probably something's going to have to change now. So.
And now you're so thankful.
Oh, yeah, of course. Absolutely. It was life-changing for us. And we probably finished that book in April or May of 2020. And by June 1st, we had started the paperwork.
Found an agency, got rolling. I mean, that's a whole nother story. We actually have videos. I'll link them, sharing our entire adoption journey. So we won't get into all the details there. But as you know, if you've watched them, or maybe you're just finding out, we adopted 2 boys from Ukraine. So we ended up going for the international adoption route. My sister Alyssa was dating a Ukrainian at the time, long distance missionary. And that's how we got to know the country of Ukraine. We had even visited there for her engagement. We took a trip. So it became a place that we knew was going to be a part of our family. And so the thought of like, wow, adopting from there just made so much sense. We already have this connection, and now we'd have more connections. And we ended up adopting our 2 boys, which they were older. I think originally we were thinking, oh, like you imagine like little kids, but they were 10 and 6, and it was just like God's perfect plan. Like the most amazing boys. Like we were always meant to be a family, and it's just so clear every day to me. Like that's God's plan. That was his story for us from the beginning. I mean, just thinking back on it, it's like when we were getting married, we had no idea the journey ahead, and we had no idea that our oldest, Caleb, was literally turning 1 right around the time that we were getting married, and that one day he would be our son. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just mind blowing to know, like, God knew that the whole time. He had that plan for us. He saw the big picture. And as we're wrestling through the daily grind of all the unknowns and trusting him and what's going to happen, like he already had it planned out. And it's just amazing to look back on it and see his hand working. So
it's beautiful.
Yeah. We brought our 2 boys home in 2021 and have just been like loving being a family. They're like the hugest blessings, like getting to be a mom to them and just experience motherhood, and particularly to them, has just been the hugest gift that God has given me, like outside of my salvation and my husband. Like
super stretching.
Amazing.
Super stretching. Like all the uncertainty there, all of the unknowns.
Oh yeah.
Diving into the middle of it, like 6 and 10.
I know.
You know, Caleb just turned 14. Christian just turned 10. So I mean, we've got a teenager now, and it's like, hold on, I didn't have time to prepare for this. You know?
I know, like, boom.
Like, we're having conversations.
Caleb's talking about driving.
Yeah, like, oh, next year. Like, what? Next year?
Yeah. So we were thrown into the middle of parenting. It's been
a whirlwind, but an absolute blessing. Yeah. Super grateful for it.
And I love going hunting with you.
I've got permanent, lifetime hunting buddies. It's the best thing.
It is, yeah. The beauty of adoption has just become like the reality of it. Getting to experience it has been incredible. And it has opened my eyes to see the gospel in new, more dynamic ways, realizing that I am also an orphan, someone that God took into his family, that he adopted me, gave me a new name, a new identity, a new inheritance, a new future. Like, it's just the parallels between earthly adoption and our spiritual adoption into God's family. Like, it's just incredible when you start to really see that and you're experiencing it and living it out. My appreciation for God as my father, and just, yeah, I feel like it just increased so much in experiencing earthly adoption. So
even the gospel becomes so much more meaningful in that tangible aspect of adoption. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was huge. So here we are now, family of 4. We've got our 2 boys. So excited. Like, I think for us, I was still praying, at least, like, I still think having, a baby would be so fun, and I would love more kids. I'm from a big family, as many of you know, 8 kids, and having more kids would be awesome. Whether that's adopting, we don't know what the future holds, but for now, we've got our 2 boys and we're just adjusting to life, and we're so excited. And then the most unexpected thing happened. And that is, one day after our boys could speak English, because they couldn't speak any English when they first joined our family, and we knew very little Russian. So it was mostly like Google Translate back and forth. But
that's an awesome app.
Oh my goodness, it
saved our bacon. Yeah. For sure.
But one day, it's maybe 6 months in, 6 months to a year. I don't know.
It was pretty quick. Yeah.
It was pretty fast. I mean, I'm most of my sisters, and we have lots of cousins and people who live in town and in-laws, and a lot of them are getting pregnant and having babies, and they're around all their cousins. So they're seeing this all the time. And then one of them, one day it was like bedtime and we were putting them to bed and just chatting. And they just asked me like, Mom, when are you going to have a baby? And I was like totally caught off guard by their question, and like amazed that they would even think to ask that. Like, what, like, why do you ask? And they're like, well, because, you know, this aunt's having a baby and this aunt's having a baby. And when are you going to have a baby? And I'm like,
makes sense to us. Like, let's just do this.
And it was hard to know how to answer. Obviously, we have this massive journey and story, but it's way too complex to dive into in this moment. They weren't aware of the miscarriages yet. They didn't know any of that. And the only thing I could think of to say was, you know, I would love to, but that's something that God would have to give us. Like, it's a gift from him, and he hasn't given us that particular gift, but it's something that we can pray for. And they were like, oh, okay. And so from that night on, every bedtime, we do our little bedtime routine. We'd go in and pray with them. They would pray that God would give us a baby.
What'd you think of that, babe?
That was hard for me. I'm like, okay, Lord, if not for me, for them, like, come on. It was really hard for me because it wasn't just me or like us with this longing. It's now them longing for this too, and wanting this too, and praying for it with like the sweetest little prayers that, you know, that God would give us a baby and that he would put it in mommy's tummy and like all these things. And I'm just like, okay, like literally crying, like my heart cannot handle this, Lord. I just didn't expect that. I don't know. That caught me off guard. It's the sweetest thing, but it really caught me by surprise.
Yeah. It didn't surprise me, really.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, there was just a lot of people that were having babies around us.
It's true. It was very...
So I can see the boys being like, okay, I mean, Mom doesn't look older than them, so what's going on, you know? I mean, I get it. As a little guy in my brain, I'd be like, yeah, what gives? When does this happen for us? Yeah.
It was the thing that I think so sweet about it is that they wanted a baby.
That's great.
You know, they didn't have an attitude of like, well, we're the kids and any more would be an intrusion on our family.
At all. Yeah.
No, it was 100% like more the merrier. And like having a little sibling would be awesome. And we could do this with them. And anytime they're around their little cousins, they're always like wanting to push the stroller and help get it in and out of the car seat. They're amazing with little kids. And so they would be amazing big brothers. But just watching them like day after day pray for this, I'm like, okay, Lord, like, please answer this prayer. Like, this would just be amazing. And it stirred up in me something that I feel like I was kind of getting to a place of, okay, if this is our family, we're a family of 4 with our 2 boys, like, that is awesome. Like, what a gift, what a blessing, you know, wonderful. But then as they started praying, it's like it started stirring up all these feelings again of like, Lord.
I was done. I was there. I was like, oh, this is our family. This is great. We're good.
It was so hard for me. So that kind of got the ball rolling of like, okay, I'm not getting any younger. Should we do anything more intentional? You know, we had stopped pursuing, you know, any like doctor's appointments, or obviously our focus was the adoption. We weren't doing any sort of fertility treatments or anything, but it kind of got us thinking, maybe we should give it one more go. Like, maybe we should try to just see if there's anything else we can figure out. If I have some issues that we just haven't looked into, maybe there's something a rock we haven't turned over. Maybe we should give it one more go. And then if it doesn't work out and we just can't get answers and we're not successful getting a pregnancy, then we'll just know like, okay, that door is really closed kind of thing. But I'm not getting any younger. And if we don't take action soon, then it's going to be too late kind of thing. And I just shared that with you. And you talk to some guys at church, our pastor, just like running it by them. And they were, what they say.
Yeah, one of the pastors, they actually came over to our house and they said that one of the most helpful things that I remember was, and this was actually tied to the adoption, but it applies to all of marriage and life. Yeah. Like, if you're not unified in the decision that you're making, that's one of the main ways God directs you, right? So like, if you're unified, great. If you're not, breaks. At the very least, breaks. Like, hold on. So I was the breaks at this point. But I think, you know, talking to guys at church and, just praying about it more. It's like, I'm open to it.
Yeah.
I'm open to it.
Well, and one of the guys in our small group, I think you told me, he was saying, yeah, if you're going to go for it, now's probably the time. Like, if you're going to pursue something more intentional, like, now's probably the time, because time's just going to go by. And then
that wasn't really what I wanted to hear.
And he was kind of affirming, like, yeah, your wife might have some good points. And I was like, yes.
Your wife makes a great point. Gosh, that was not what I wanted to hear. You're supposed to say the other thing.
Oh. But your wife makes a good point.
Here we are.
So we decided, okay, let's give it one more go. So we started, looking up doctors again and got into another clinic and pursued some fertility treatments. And that was just even entering that scene, because we had done some of this stuff years before. That was also like a kind of a raw place in my heart of like, like we're opening this door again. And when you open the door, when you just even start intentionally pursuing things again, it feels like you're getting your hopes up. Obviously, you wouldn't pursue it if you had no hope. We pursue these things because we're hopeful, right? And so inherently, like in being hopeful, you have to wrestle with a lot of those emotions and those feelings and like that surrender. And what if it doesn't work out and we invest this time and this money and then, we're on the other side of this, or what if it does work, but then we have more miscarriages? Like, so just even that journey of trusting the Lord was, I kind of felt like it started all over for me in many ways, but Isaiah 26 verses 2-3 were huge for me during this season, during the adoption period. And I've shared these with y'all before because they're some of my favorites, but Isaiah 26, 3-4 says, you keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord is an everlasting rock. And a time in life where it just felt like there weren't any rocks, like besides the Lord, like things just felt very uncertain and we're moving forward. I just love that reminder. And I would just meditate on this and remind my heart that the Lord, he's the one who gives the peace. We can't manufacture peace. Our circumstances don't determine our peace. Ultimately, peace is given to us by the Lord when we set our mind on him. And we set our mind on him because we're trusting him. And it was taking me back to that time way earlier, the kind of the drought season, which was very spiritually fruitful, where the Lord was using his names and all the names of God and attributes of God to remind me of why he's trustworthy, because this is who I am, and taking that trust translating into setting my mind on the Lord. And then as a result, the Lord gives us peace. And he was giving, for me, that was huge in understanding like how to even have peace in this new pursuit. So we start pursuing it. And again, just like, okay, Lord, you can use this, you cannot. Whatever the outcome is, help us to trust you. And to our shock of shocks, the ultimate shock, maybe? I don't know. I keep saying it's like the ultimate shock.
Yeah.
But
it was crazy.
October 23rd, I wrote it down so I could remember. October 23rd, 2023, I take a pregnancy test without telling him while he's at work. Because
it irritated me a bit.
Did it?
Yeah, of course.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just kind of wanted to process the news, like, just like by myself first. Good or bad.
I get it, for sure.
Rather than like, I don't know, together. It just felt like I just need this moment. And I take a pregnancy test while he's at work, and it's like positive. Like barely, but like enough where I know over the years I've taken a lot. I know this is positive. And so I run to the grocery store, of course, because I have like
bought the entire grocery store of this time. Yeah.
And I get the different brands, the digital kind, the regular kind. And I take them all and they're all positive. And I'm just like so shocked. Like, oh my goodness. And then you come home from work and I just tell you, like, you're not going to believe this. And you were super shocked too.
Well, I think the way she presented it, I thought like she had cancer or something.
What? I made
something
it seem like something bad.
It was like I was nervous for like what you were about to share. Like I wasn't like, oh, what happened? What's
Maybe
going
that was
on?
my plan to make it like
I
really
don't know,
serious.
But I was a bit fearful when she first said it.
And then at least it was good news.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, so
and then she showed me. This was the problem because you showed me like 3 different tests, and I'm like, what are those?
You knew what they were.
No, but there was like we just COVID the stuff.
You didn't know.
I'm like, what's happening? I don't know what's going on.
COVID.
There's no I don't know what's going on, and I was just And then you're like, and then it clicked.
Yeah, I do remember there being like like you were kind of confused at first. That's true.
I was so confused. So I was like, what are you showing me? Oh, wow. Then I was shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was big deal, obviously.
Then we were shocked. And then it was that, it was like the minute I found out, I was overjoyed beyond measure. Of course, it's what we're praying for. It's what we're pursuing intentionally. We're trying to like make this happen. And then at the same time, a wave of all the fears, all the past, this is what, we're at 12 years of marriage at this point. All the things that had happened before and the way every pregnancy had ended and like devastation and grief came rushing on like over me. And it was just almost too much to bear. Like, I am so excited for this positive test and I am terrified of what's going to happen. And I am so scared now to even like acknowledge this, want to think about this anymore because it's probably not going to work out. This is like where my heart's going, right? Just full transparency. And I was scared to even like embrace the fact that I was pregnant. And so my heart was really struggling in those early moments of just the reality of being pregnant again.
And me too. I was fearful of going through that whole process again.
Mm-hmm.
Just like already playing it out in my mind, like, okay, here we go again. Why are we doing this to ourselves?
Yeah, almost like,
but of course, this is how it always ends for us. It's just kind of a very skeptical. There's a wrong way to view the whole process. But I think again, this goes back to my I'm done. I'm done with this, you know. And then that's not what happened.
Yeah. Right. But you don't know how it's going to end. And that's the reality. In those moments you don't. And that's why you trust the Lord, so right?
You have to have that realistic view of things.
True.
Right? You got to be able to hold both.
Yeah.
And like, I can be excited and I have to also realize like this could end tomorrow.
I know. It was a really hard place to be. So we find out really early on, I'm like, 4 weeks, like right when you find out, and then 5 weeks, and then 6 weeks, right around the time that we had those 2 early miscarriages, I experienced some spotting, like very tiniest little bit, but still any amount is like not good news typically for me. And so that just sent me down the path of like, I'm for sure miscarrying. Like this is the beginning. We had a camping trip planned with a bunch of friends from church that weekend. And I was just a wreck. I was like, I cannot go. Like I am literally like, I think I'm going to miscarry. But we, the boys had been so excited about this trip with their friends and with the group from church that I was like, I really think you should go. And Lord willing, this will turn out to be nothing, but like I have to treat it like it could be something serious. I wasn't like in any pain or anything. So it wasn't like you needed to stick around to like help me. I really felt like you go. It wasn't that far away. If I needed him to come back, he could easily get back. I was like, I'll just stay home. I just need this time to like pray and process and just rest and just kind of like keep an eye on things. And so that's what we agreed to do. And I thought for sure, I was like, by the time this weekend's over, like we're going to miscarry. And so I started grieving, I think prematurely, like grieving like it had already happened, even though it hadn't happened yet, because I just assumed like it's going to happen for sure. But that weekend was really hard.
I wasn't there.
I know. But so, I mean,
it was still... was good. That was good for you, I think, because it gave you time. I had the boys. We were, running around the woods. I was obviously thinking about it a lot, but you were able to process a lot of things.
Yeah, I was.
And turn it over to the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, I think, what I needed.
Yeah.
Like I needed to just have time with me and the Lord to like focus on it. So that weekend passes and we don't miscarry. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I had called our doctor and everything, like, and there's just nothing they can do at that point. It's not like, if you're going to miscarry that early, it's just going to happen. And so that's always the hard part. Like there's not much you can do. And so, by the way, this round, like this pregnancy, I was on, additional just like supplements and progesterone and just different things that I had never taken with the previous pregnancies. And so we were hopeful that maybe some of these new protocols that our doctor had implemented, that those would be helpful for sustaining the pregnancy, but we didn't know. It was just like, let's just do these things and hope maybe it'll help. And so we make it through that weekend, and then we make it, to week 7, week 8. I'm trying to think if there was anything else like really scary that happened early on. It was just a day by day.
I mean, you were feeling terrible. That was one of the things that was a big deal.
Thank you. I started feeling really nauseous after that weekend where we thought we were miscarrying and then I didn't. I started feeling really nauseous.
Like all the time.
Like morning sickness, but morning, noon, and night, and eating made it worse. Like everyone says, like, snack all day and you'll be better. I'm like, I eat and I feel more nauseous. Like, this is the worst. But I was thankful because everything I read, and even my, the doctor's like, this is good sign, the hormones are working. And we tested my numbers and they were all going up, and everything. And it was just like, okay, I had never experienced nausea before because the pregnancies obviously never worked out. So something wasn't quite right. But
so when I would come home and I'd ask her, like, how you doing, babe? Like, I feel terrible. I'm like, good.
Yeah.
She's like, hey.
Praise the Lord.
I'm like, well, I mean, this is good news. I know.
It's like, I know, but this is no joke. So yes, thank you for remembering that. The nausea was really bad, and like random symptoms, around like maybe week 7, week 8, I completely lost my desire for like coffee. I had already been drinking decaf, but like just the flavor, the taste, the smell like became repulsive to me. Like instantly made me feel super nauseous just to even like smell it. And that is so weird because I'm like such a coffee drinker and like such an avid coffee fan. Even decaf, I just like love the warm coffee. Just like every morning you'd make me a cup, and it was so weird. Like literally hating it. Like,
so like a few days into this nausea, she's like, you don't make me coffee in the morning. I'm like, wow, it's a crazy thing.
I know.
Wow, this is nuts.
I know. And there were other weird aversions and stuff, but overall, it was mainly the nausea. So, your breath never became an issue.
I need to, probably do my, mouthwash a little bit more often these days, but
no, early on. I think you did. I think you were trying to help me out. But the
myself out. What are you talking about?
And me
kissing.
So the nausea was probably the worst part of it, but it really did feel like just a daily journey of every day felt like a milestone. Like if we would make it one more day, it was like, Lord, you got us through this day. And then the next day, like, Lord, you got this pregnancy through this day. And each day felt so long and each week felt so long. And that first trimester, like when we got to 12 weeks, and we went in for an ultrasound.
Wait, hold on a second. I'm always thinking that 12 weeks is the first trimester. But by the time we were done with the first trimester, it was like 13 and a half, maybe 14, because she's like, nah, not really. Depends on how you look at it. Maybe it's this long, because she just wasn't ready to believe that we were out of the first trimester.
Yeah, because like one, doctor would say like, oh, the first trimester ends at 14 weeks and someone else it ends at 13 weeks. Like however you look at it, like it's just confusing.
Like regardless, this is big. This is a big deal.
Big.
We made it to 12 weeks.
I know. So we make it to 12 weeks and it's like for us, a ginormous milestone, but there's still the question of like, is everything okay? Right? We had a couple ultrasounds. We were monitored more closely because of our situation, and we go in and I'm just like every ultrasound, we'd had a couple up to this point, felt like a mountain that we had to climb, like, or a marathon. And if we could just make it to the end of this ultrasound and everything be okay, then it's like, okay, like one more milestone down, now however many more to go, like that's how I felt going in. I did not enjoy the ultrasounds, to be honest. I didn't look forward to them. I faced a lot of fear that I would have to like take to the Lord and pray for his strength to like just help me trust him before every ultrasound, because the ultrasound, when our third pregnancy, that's how we found out that the baby didn't have a heartbeat, was at an ultrasound. So ultrasounds weren't fun for me for the whole beginning.
Yeah, basically you go to the appointment and you find out whether we're good or it's no longer happening. So it was like a line in the sand. So when you got to the other side of it, it's like, okay, we're good. But before then it's like dreading it.
Right. Like everything could be great, or we could get the worst news ever and now have to process the worst. So I would always think about like what's happening after the ultrasound that day and that weekend. Like if we need to just pull back and grieve this loss. It was like so much, like just so heavy and so hard.
We even rescheduled a couple of them.
We did.
Because of what was going on that weekend or whatever, like just in case, let's push it to Monday.
Yes, like social commitments and things like, oh, if we get bad news, that's going to be hard to be involved in that thing. Yes, so it was just kind of living like week by week and just trusting the Lord. But by his grace and mercy and providence, that 12-week ultrasound was positive, like good, all good news, baby's on track, growth, everything. And we decided at that point that we wanted to find out the gender also, which
we decided.
I really wanted to, but you were totally on board for it.
I'm up for anything.
Of course.
Sure.
Not at the ultrasound though, but at just doing a blood test. So we did a blood test, and that same day we actually got the email from it was like the clinics weren't connected, an email saying what the baby was. And we already told you all, but it was just like the sweetest thing, because we got in the car together and we opened up the email and it's like, congratulations, you're having a, and we did not care, honestly, right? Like we were like, healthy babies, what we want. I mean, did you have a preference?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, of course.
What?
A girl, of course.
Oh, wait, you did?
Yeah. You didn't know this?
I thought you were just like, either one would be great.
Well, what am I going to say? I won't take the one that's a boy. And of course, anything would be amazing. But like if I could like literally flip a switch, if I could choose.
Oh, you did actually say that. Okay.
Yeah.
You said like, obviously whatever God gives us, I'm going to love 100%. And like a healthy baby's the goal. But if I had to pick, and I don't think I picked, right?
I don't know if you were in the like state of mind to even care at that point.
Just like, I was so thankful that the ultrasound was good news.
Mm-hmm.
So we opened the email, and then it, it's like this little video, and congratulations, you're having a, and then it like does like 3 more things before it tells you. And then it finally said like, it's a girl. And like all this like pink confetti kind of came down on the screen. And it was just like, I burst into tears. You started crying. I mean, it was a really sweet moment, and we were totally thrilled. And now, but at the same time, we're so thrilled, but now I know I'm having a girl. Mm-hmm. And it just makes it even more personal, even more real. Like it's not just a baby, it's a baby girl, a daughter. And like now your thoughts can absorb the reality of having a daughter. And so now even more so, like the thought of things ending, it was just that much weightier of like, oh, you're not just losing a baby, you're losing a daughter. And you automatically start thinking of names, and you're imagining your future. And I'm imagining the 2 older boys with this little sister, like the cutest dynamics, and just like how tender and sweet they are toward little ones. And so again, it was like every good news we received and every exciting piece of information along the way also came with like this heaviness of, whoa, if this doesn't work out, like, oh, like, Lord, this is going to be really hard. Help me.
And I think that every week it was kind of like the stakes get higher.
Yes.
Yes, you're further down the road, you're thankful, but also like now we've got something even more to lose. Like It's even bigger if things don't work out from now on. So there's like this balance of like, oh, great, but also like, oh, great. It just gets heavier and heavier and heavier.
It's like the blessing and the weight. The blessing gets bigger and the weight gets bigger. Like, whoo.
And I don't think that, I guess there was a turning point at some point, and maybe we're not there yet, but, eventually it gets to the point where like, oh, probably mid 20 weeks where you're like, if the baby is actually born right now, there's a good chance of survival.
Yeah.
But before that, it's like, now it's it's just so heavy.
Before that. So when we found out, though, the gender, we had not told the boys yet. So the boys didn't know. And we were not on the same page about this. Like you were much more of like, you wanted to tell them pretty early on about the news, which I think is a right response, and I didn't want to tell them because I was like, we've only ever miscarried in the first trimester. Let's wait till we get a little further, and then we can tell them the news. And then there's like a greater chance, that things might work out. Just in my own heart, thinking of processing like their excitement and joy, because they'd been praying for this. Like I knew they were going to be so excited, so thrilled, like answered a prayer. And then to have to walk through, if a miscarriage happened, like the grief for us, for them as a family, it just felt almost too much. Like, I just don't know if I can take that. And so I just said like, hey, I know you want to tell them, but can we please wait? Like for my sake. And you were really gracious about that.
Sure.
Because you knew like, okay. And I was like, I'm not ready. Even at 12 weeks, I was like, I'm not ready. And it was actually December 23rd when we found out the gender. And Christmas was like 2 days away.
There were even times where I'm like, babe, I don't know if you're actually going to tell anybody until you're holding the freaking baby,
And I was like, honestly, yeah, pretty much.
Like, yeah, probably so. I'm like, oh.
I know, but you understood at the same time, but you were also good because you were helping me not live in a constant state of fear.
Right.
Like my sinful bent would be to just be fearful and to like keep everything to myself and not tell anyone. So if things don't work out, I don't have to, process the grief publicly or with tons of people knowing and having to tell them. And that had happened with our third pregnancy. We had told a lot of people because we were almost out of the first trimester, and then having to retell all of those people that we had miscarried. And like, it was almost like you were reliving the grief with every new person. That was really hard for me. And I just had remembered that. And I was like, I just don't want that
didn't
again.
Want to do that again. Sure.
But still, there comes a point where you have to just trust the Lord with the outcome. I mean, the whole time you have to trust him, but
I think it was a good balance. Yeah. Like I was constantly like, hey, what about now? And you're like, probably not yet. And so we eventually got there.
We eventually got there. So then we find out the gender.
Just be grateful you're getting this video right now. Yeah. Who knows? You could have seen a picture 12 months from now. Yes. 1 year old. And you're like, what? When did that happen?
We have a 1-year-old. I'm just not ready to share. Yeah. It's true. You helped me, push me forward, which helped me trust the Lord. And you were helpful in helping me celebrate the reality of actually being pregnant and having a baby, because it's so easy to just be fearful that you lose all thankfulness, gratitude, celebration of like the joy of what's even happening. And I knew that was, I could see that happening. Like I'm only focusing on the negative potential outcome. I'm not even thanking the Lord for the truth of what's happening today. And like, we're pregnant and this baby's healthy. Like, praise the Lord. Let's celebrate that, So you were helpful in like just bringing balance to us. So I appreciate that. But Christmas was in 2 days, and you were like, we really should tell the boys on Christmas. And I was like, still like, oh, are you sure? Maybe for Valentine's Day. You're like, we should tell them. I'm like, okay, fine. So we did a really sweet little thing. Do you want to share what we did on Christmas morning?
Yeah. Obviously this was none of my idea. It's all her idea. So you got a little onesie, right? And
yes.
It said, what did it say on it?
It was a little like newborn onesie that said, coming soon, with little like baby feet.
And she wrapped it. It was one of the joint gifts for the boys. And they opened it, and I think one of their cousins was just born, right?
Yeah, like 6 months before.
Like, okay, so they have babies on their mind, and they look at it coming soon, and they're so confused. And
it did not click.
They did not click. They're
Zero.
Like, oh, is this for whoever
for
that baby
cousin?
Was? For that cousin, whatever. And we're like, no. And we explained it like, no, Mama's pregnant. Like, we're going to have a baby. Caleb literally fell over. Like,
he like fake fainted. Like,
fake fainted. And Christian was like, what? They flipped out. As we expected. Yes. As we expected. It was so sweet. And did we tell them the gender at that point?
No. So we told them we were having, they finally realized like, wait, Mama's having a baby. And Christian, our younger one, so sweet, came over and started kissing my belly, and there wasn't much showing at that point. And it was just like the sweetest thing. And they were just so shocked and so excited. And of course, all the joy that I knew they would have, I'm like seeing it. And again, it's like, Lord, help my heart right now. Help me to celebrate this joy, to not immediately go to the fear of like, what if this doesn't work out? And look how excited they are. And they're literally so attached already, talking about when she's going to come this summer, all these things. And I'm just like, so even in that, again, it's like the joy and then like the wrestle, like, going hand in hand. But the joy is far outweighed the struggle for sure. And I was really thankful afterwards that we had told them on Christmas that we didn't wait.
Absolutely.
But then we went to my family's later that day or the next day for Christmas celebration with them. And that's when we actually announced the gender to our families. Our families knew that we were pregnant. And we did like the little poppers. And it was so sweet because the boys got to do it with us, even though they were still finding out with the family. They got to do the poppers. And so, of course, you pop and it's like all the pink goes everywhere. And they're just like, like a baby sister. And so excited for a baby sister. And there are a couple other little cousins that are girls that were born, and then some going to be born around the same time as ours. And it was just so sweet. Then we did the same thing with your family the next day, I think, for, Christmas celebration, and they got to do the poppers again. And so that was just such a joyous time. And now we were all four as a family in on the news, knowing it's a girl. And just the reality of like, okay, it's still going to be a while. We're only at week 12. We still have a long journey ahead of us, but now we're walking through this together. And I think there was a sweetness of being able to pray together openly as a family for baby sister. The boys would pray for her every single day. Their prayers went from, God, would you give us a baby, to like, please help baby sister be healthy.
Every doctor's appointment, we come back and
Yeah.
they'd be like, how was it? She's doing great. Everything's good. And like, oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
So
And
like, we're all on it.
They would get really into the doctor's appointments, actually. Like, especially our oldest, he knew, well, I don't know if we mentioned, but we had told them about the miscarriages way before this. When they had, at some point after, when they had first asked about why I wasn't having a baby, sometime later on, the next few months, we ended up telling them about the miscarriages and our story and the journey. And so they knew that we had had babies that had not made it. And so that reality was present for them. And they knew, and we would even say like, God's in control ultimately. Let's all pray for healthy baby sister, but we got to trust God because we don't know for sure what's going to happen. And so when we would have doctor's appointments, I know specifically our older one, I just think the reality of that, the weight of something could be wrong was real for him. And so he would, like, as soon as I would get home, he would come like, how's baby sister? What'd the doctor say? And he was really, like he was bearing that. And it was just sweet to have that support, like from our own children, like, and that love and that care, the prayers. So it continued to remain a journey as we ventured into the teens, 16, 17 weeks, 18 weeks, 19. Then we make it to 20, which is halfway. And, we do like the anatomy scan. I was scared before the anatomy scan. Of course, I'm always scared. I'm always trying to trust the Lord more. But going into that, how did you feel?
Nervous.
Yeah.
Just because, yes, baby, yes, life, yes, girl, is she healthy? Like you still don't know, like, so in that anatomy scan, we found out she had all 4 limbs, like, oh, her eyes, her ears, her nose, like, okay, all the things that you want to see at that time we found out about, but going into it, you're like, it could go any way.
Yeah, you just don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Good on another opportunity to trust the Lord. And it was also, it's halfway. It's the anatomy scan. It's like a big milestone in this whole process. Huge. How did you feel after?
Well, we got great news at the anatomy scan. I will say something funny though. The sonographer, she was very, like, imagine the quietest librarian that you've ever met. And just like barely would speak.
Very
and when she
tight-lipped.
did, just very soft and quiet, like, and so she's doing the anatomy scan. We're not doctors. We don't know what we're looking at, but we're trying to like decipher what we're seeing on the screen as she's checking every part of the baby. We have no idea if the baby's like healthy or not. And so she's checking and she's just like, like going to each part. And we were trying to get information like, so what's that? And she would just barely tell us like, oh, that's the brain, or that's the heart, or that's the chamber. And we're like, okay, how does it look? Does it look okay? You're trying to just little questions. And she would be like,
something.
Still checking. And she wouldn't give us like clear answers. And so as we're leaving the room where she did the ultrasound, she said, okay, well, here's your papers. Take them, downstairs to your doctor and she'll review them with you. And she's like, everything looks pretty good. And of course, the word pretty good freaks me out because I'm like, why didn't she say great? Why didn't she say awesome? Why didn't she say everything looks perfect? And she just said pretty good. And so I walk out there. I'm like, babe, do you think something's wrong? Like, she said pretty good. Oh no, I even asked her. I said, as we're about, we're walking out the door with our papers, I said, so you said everything looks pretty good. Was there something concerning? And she's like, your doctor will review everything with you. I'm like, oh no. So then we get up to our doctor, it's in the same building, and we just go down the floor or whatever. And we get into her office and she looks it over and she's like, oh, everything looks great. Nothing to report. And we're like, wait, everything looks great. She's like, yeah, nothing. There's no problems. Everything looks great. Baby's healthy. All the things are measuring on track and nothing concerning. We're like, oh, okay.
So we come to find out, as probably many of you know, that these sonographers, they're not doctors, so they don't want to get in trouble for saying things that aren't true, and they want the doctor to say those things. So they have to play their, play their hand close to the vest, so to speak. And Kristen stuck on that word pretty.
That was hard.
But it was fun. In fact, it was great.
It was great news. Praise the Lord.
You get to the other side of it, and now are you finally starting to feel some bit of excitement? And
after that, yes.
For sure, more excitement. I know. We
got to wrap this up. Yeah, for sure, more excitement. We still had not announced it publicly. We had been telling close friends. Obviously, our families knew. We've been telling close friends, but we hadn't even, like, the news was still pretty close, I would say at that point. We had not even ventured to just telling, other friends at church and different things. Like, and you were wanting to tell more people. And I was like, let's wait a little longer. But then after the 20-week anatomy scan, I was like, okay, like we're like over halfway. We had a great anatomy scan. I guess we can tell more people, but I still wasn't ready to like post online or anything. I just needed more time. So we ended up telling more people, not announcing it again, but just in person when we would see someone and they're like, how's life? How you doing? Well, we're pregnant, and for every person we told, it was shocking to them and tears and just like, praise the Lord. We've been praying for you guys. Like, it was just so sweet to even see just the community that we're in and the love and support and just the years of prayers that people have poured out on our behalf. Our small group, like, it was just amazing. So we had so much support. But again, every new person I told, it was like, that's one more person that we're going to have to tell, like, if things don't work out. Of course, like, okay, Lord, help me to trust you. Help me to trust you. But as time went on and, the next ultrasound, however many weeks later, that one was positive again. Baby's growing on track, heartbeat strong, everything looks good. I was like, is this really happening? Like, I had made a joke, okay, about, the culture that we live in and this day and time of like personal pronouns and everything and how everyone like identifies as all these different things. And I just made a joke to you about like, I don't identify as a pregnant woman. Like, I am struggling to even embrace this reality because I'm scared to even like, oh, like, 'cause then if I embrace it and it doesn't work out, like, oh, so I'm almost like, I don't even think of myself as being pregnant. And I wasn't even wanting to buy any like maternity clothes or anything, just like, okay, let's just keep seeing how it's going to go. And so I made that joke to you and you were kind of like, okay, but pretty soon you're going to have to start identifying as a pregnant lady.
You have the benefit of being really tall. So you didn't really show for quite a while.
Oh, like after 20 weeks.
And even when you were showing, you'd still hide it.
I wear like big dresses and shirts.
I'm like, eventually this ain't going to work no more.
I know.
So
I would wear really loose clothing and no one knew. I mean, people couldn't really tell. I got called out once by someone I hadn't told yet. And I was wearing something that was still loose, but it just like hugged like a little bit when I would walk. And she was like, are you pregnant? I mean, she knew that we were being intentional about wanting to get pregnant, but I was like, how could you tell? She's like, oh, I could just tell. I'm like, you are brave. I wouldn't ask that. But she was right. And it was true. But yeah, I was scared to even buy anything maternity or like, I didn't want to buy any baby stuff. Like, I just wanted to wait and wait and wait and wait. And that's where you again came in clutch because you're like, babe, there's things like we should probably start thinking about getting, just helping me celebrate the joy and the reality without being so fearful that I was just crippled to do anything. Right. But I remember when we bought our stroller, and that wasn't that long ago, but it was the first time I had ever purchased like a baby item that was significant, like a nice stroller, like something that's more than just like $20. And that was so exciting. I remember at the store, like I had researched all the strollers and like, okay, this is the one that I think would be best for us. And I love it and all the features, whatever. But then when we got it home, I remember like the next day I was really struggling. And I think actually, no, that night, I think I was just crying. And I was like, why did we buy that stroller? That was premature.
I'm not sure that was the right move, right?
Yeah,
you were just
we should have waited.
Second guessing yourself.
Yeah, it was too early. This isn't a sure thing. Like, why are we buying strollers? And you just would like talk me off the ledge. Like, help me just like come back down to like, okay, we have to trust the Lord. We don't know what tomorrow holds, but you're 30 something weeks pregnant. Like, things are looking good. You would just kind of even remind me of like just the reality of the situation and how it was really positive.
We all need that sometimes.
Yeah, but that continued to happen every time we'd purchase something big or I'd tell a whole nother group of people. It was just like, okay, the wrestle. But we did get to the point finally where we announced it online, and that was really fun. And I thought that was going to be really hard afterwards. Like, oh no, like everyone knows, like the whole world knows. But I don't know. the Lord just gave extra grace in that or something, because that wasn't as like scary for me on the other side of it. It was kind of like, wow, okay, this is like really real. And so many of you responded with so much joy and kindness and celebration and prayers and tears for us that I was like, wow, this is really sweet to get to share in this joy with so many who've been supporting us and praying for us over the years. So yeah, that basically takes us to present time, where we are now, and just anticipating the arrival of this little baby girl. We do have a name picked out, but we're not going to announce it until she's born. So we've just told our direct family.
Not sure why we're doing that, but it's not changing. It's not changing.
The name's not changing. I know. You would have already told everyone. I don't know. I just kind of thought it was sweet. Like, let's just wait till she's born and we'll announce her birth and her name and it'll be sweet.
So that's what we're going to do.
But yeah, we just, in all of this, praise the Lord. I will say this, like, he was good in our suffering and he is good in our rejoicing. Like, in our sorrows, he's the same God, the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. His character is steadfast. He is trustworthy. He is faithful. We don't just praise him now that we're getting this huge answer to prayer. We didn't just praise him when God, he gave us our boys. We have learned that he is good and faithful, and he is our portion. Ultimately, our hope should be in him in the really low times and the hard times, and then in the joys and in the celebrations. And so we give him all the praise and glory for this. And we just could not be more excited, more grateful. It's just an unexpected turn of events, I would say, that we are just beyond excited about.
So thank you again. Please keep praying, and we'll keep you posted. What do you think the next announcement's going to be?
I don't know.
What are they going to get?
Probably, yeah, once baby comes, I'm going to be taking a break. Y'all know we shared this in a recent podcast, but taking a break from Girldefined for a couple months just to obviously adjust to new life, maternity leave, just figuring out life with a newborn.
So no news is good news?
No news, hopefully, yeah, no news is good news, but we will probably record a video, I think, sharing the story on the other side of it and just like life with a newborn. That'll be really sweet. But okay, just in closing, what would you say is like top thing or two that you're most excited about having a baby, a little girl?
I'm really excited to see how the boys do with a little sister. I think that's going to be awesome to see them like grow as young men in caring for this little girl, then a toddler, then a girl, then a young woman. Like, I would just want to see that progression with them. I think that's going to be really good for them, honestly. Having to serve somebody else, which is
a very needy little human,
which I think I'm excited about that. And then I think probably what everybody looked like, eventually walking my daughter down the aisle one day, like thinking,
don't get me crying
20
again.
years from now. That's pretty crazy. I'm terrified right now. Like, what do I do with a little girl? But down the road, I feel like I'll have it by then. And,
you're like, I'm so excited about 20 years from now.
But the next 3 weeks.
What are you excited about having a baby? A baby.
I'm excited
I think
to
you're
look forward to the end.
I'm excited to see you have a little baby, because I think that it's going to bring out parts of your personality and your like tender side and like your nurturing side in a way that nothing has yet. Like, even marriage brings out some, right? But like, then we have the boys and, you're more rough and tough with them, hunting, boy stuff. It's less of like, oh, like this sweet, like little nurturing, but watching you have like a tiny little daughter and just like your nurture and love for her, I think it's going to bring out sides of you that I haven't seen yet. And I think that's going to be really sweet.
Oh, gosh, I hope so.
I think so. And then just personally, I don't know, just this prayer of like, praying for a baby for so many years, and the reality of that happening and like holding her and like having a baby is just, it's like, I can hardly wrap my mind around it, honestly, still.
Even now, yes.
It still just doesn't quite feel real. Like, what will she look like, and her little personality, and just, I don't know. It's something we prayed for so long, and all the little baby stuff, like, it's just so sweet. I know, as everyone tells us, like, we're going to probably not get a lot of sleep, and it's going to be really challenging. We feel up for the challenge. Like, we know it's probably going to be really sanctifying, and push us in ways that we've never been pushed, just with having a newborn and all that brings. But I just feel it's been 13 years. I'm ready for it. Bring it on.
There you go.
And we appreciate all of your prayers.